progressions are a series, there's 3 progressions, 1, 2, and 3. Within each progression, there's a series of 3 writing assignments. And those writing assignments can culminate either in an essay, a traditional essay, or can be carried over. Some teachers might do it the first semester, but carried over to the second semester to become the material for project medium, project space, and project text. So that the work we ask students to do in progressions 1, 2, and 3 is producing material that they can use to create complete larger assignments like project space, project medium, and project text.
Since it's the first actual project, I would say, that we're doing in this semester, I do more focus on actually summarizing what is being read, because what I really want them to do is get the content and start understanding that so much of what they are used to doing is skimming. Like, they'll read something and then 2 seconds later they're, oh, I'm done, and then you ask them what it's about and they are not really sure. So I really like to focus on the actual summary. So tell me exactly, what was it about? Were there any main people in the story or in the article? Anything that stands out to you? Anything you think is important?
Normally what I want the students to sort of really glean from this idea of summary is, well, how are you understanding it? And in understanding and summarizing a text, right, you're learning to sort of understand what you're understanding from the text, but at the same time, you're also learning to sort of think about the topic itself. So in that way, you're sort of doing invention, right? Because you're responding to the text in a certain way. It's not just summarizing what the writer said, but also summarizing what you, as a student, is learning from the text.
We do focus on invention, but we always use passages from cultural areas of our discipline. For example, we have used Cornel West's, some of his works that he has been well known for. And we use passages from some of those books to give the students a sense of an understanding of the issues that confront a particular race of people. But at the same time, we want them to be able to summarize what is it that they're reading. So in a sense, to have that personal relationship with the content and the process as well.
Critical reading is a really essential component for Progression 1. And the way that I introduce critical reading is to have the students read different genres. So teaching them some basic skills of critical reading, but then also showing them how those skills can function in different genres, I found really helps them grasp exactly what critical reading is and how to conduct it on their own.
We use Alice Walker, for example, and the slave narratives, which have been very, very poignant in terms of teaching students how history intersects, with culture and writing.
One of the best ways to sort of really interact with the text is just sort of marking the places that you first connect with, right? I don't want them to stress out about, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that, but rather try to connect with the text. I think that's the best way to really learn how to critically read. Mark the things that you don't understand. Mark the things that maybe seems important for you, but at this point in time, you're not sure, right? Why does it seem important? And I give them a chance to sort of just immerse themselves, get into conversation with the text. In the classroom, we talk about their different ideas, their different questions. And I think that's the best way to really engage them in critical reading, is just sort of asking questions of the text. And every semester, I always use different texts. Sometimes I'll use theoretical texts if I have to, but there are times when I'll just use, regular novels. Like this semester, we use Jessica Hagedorn's Dog Eaters, which is a very, very hard text. It's postmodern, and it's set in Manila, Philippines, so it's it's a different time and place too. It's set during when the Philippines was under martial law. So it was a hard read, but what was great about it was the students sort of really had to dig really deep to, create some sort of understanding. And I think that all the questions we asked of the text is what really engaged them in this notion of critical reading. Well, one of the most important things for me about those letters is for the students to understand this notion of audience awareness. The notion that depending on who your audience is, your writing changes, your voice changes. So one of the things we do is we do a rhetorical exercise that makes them understand how different people adjust to different audiences, and we do exercises where they realize that they change their voice whenever they're addressing a different audience, so that when they get to the letters, they see those changes, and hopefully that will sort of get reiterated once they move on to their essay.
That's why the common reading makes sort of a beautiful kind of like pairing, right, with what's going on in the stretch. And I'm not sure if that was intentional when you guys were developing it. But I did actually use the letter to the writer. They were just, they exploded. I mean, they just were, just telling her, writing to her because she was a real person, and we got to see YouTube videos of her doing various kinds of interviews. And so for her, she was real. She wasn't this kind of imaginary sort of dead person, right? Or dead writer. She was there, she was alive. And what was really wonderful about her, is she's also an English teacher. So we actually looked at this really old video of her giving advice to first-year writers. And so that made her even better, even more attractive, because they felt like they could write to her and get advice with their own writing.
The histories that we know are through letters. So I introduce the importance of letters to Black people throughout history, and then show them, give them examples, and then talk about the importance of letter writing not only for themselves but their future. Because every time they send a resume out, or every time they send a packet of information for scholarship, they're going to have to know how to write a letter. So I really give them the historical aspect in terms of how important it's been to African people in the past, but then also show how important it is to their future.
We do letters to friends and families. I've had a couple students actually write letters to their boyfriends or to their grandmas, which is still family, but the boyfriend ones are always interesting. But basically, the way I approach it is to have them, again, read over specific, whatever readings we have for that class. And then, again, take out what are the main points here, because again, I really want them to focus on understanding and starting to kind of plant little seeds for critical thinking and all that kind of stuff. So even in these very kind of informal pieces of writing, have them really think, well, what is the message that you're really trying to convey to your mom? So let's say they're writing a letter that says, hey mom, I'm in my first semester, I live at the dorms and it really sucks. I'm in this class and I've been reading about Central Americans and different ethnicities. And so then aside from just stopping there, just what's important about that for your mom to know. So then they start discussing, well, for example, we're Central American and I never knew that there was this ethnicity and this ethnicity and this ethnicity. And so that kind of gets them thinking more than just, dear mom, I'm away, I'm in this class, I hate it, blah, blah, blah. And then you just kind of get them to really, again, focus on the interesting, the important points of the readings and convey that in an informal manner.
Peer review for some of our students is a challenge. The reason is they haven't done something like this before. Basically, what you're asking them to do is to critique each other's work. And you have to give them the skills of critiquing in order for them to do a good job of it.
We do peer review in the classes. I have a sheet that's pre-made. So essentially, I give it to each one and then have them exchange their papers and then have them go through and literally answer each question on the sheet according to whatever the other person has written. And then by the end of the second semester, they're pretty much got it, and they get really good at peer review because they have to use the sheet every time. And so I think it works out pretty nicely.
So the way I introduce peer review is that, you know, you're being responsible for your own learning, right? That you are joining this community of scholars and that you guys are supposed to be hearing each other's voices and being responsible for responding to each other. And so for me, peer review is, you know, I tell the students, you know, you have this guide sheet, but at the same time, you have your own instinct about what's good writing or not, what's something you're understanding or not. So I introduce peer review as a chance for them to sort of be able to express their own agency as students.
The first time they do it, they're very hesitant because they don't want to hurt their fellow classmates' feelings. But I let them know that that's actually part of this critique of love that we call it. The things that they offer them that are going to help the student, then that is what's important and that's what they should try to do.
Because we've been kind of building up to this point, we've been reading different articles. We have written letters that kind of help explain in an informal way what the articles are about. By the time we get to the essay, they have kind of different perspectives that they've used to look at these articles. And so the essay just kind of freely flows from that. Essentially, we just take what you've learned from the letters, take the things that you learned from the summary, and now you're going to write a little essay about what the meaning of these articles are or what you got from these articles. So I think the progressions really help just easily get to the essay. It has been my experience.